both appealing for peace or were you praying for peace?
And the same applies to the carry on drag.
Yeah, that's a good question. So what do you have to say about that, guys? Morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and welcome to the latest edition of Views on the News, the show where we have opinionated people, and I've got two of them tonight. There's Tercia, whose opinions are located in South Africa, and don't mention the rugby. That's taboo. And there's Tom, who is, I believe he's in Philadelphia, but in America.
Close enough.
In American, that's within a radius of 100 miles. Yeah.
With this panel, I can just represent the whole hemisphere.
Yes. Okay. Right. So here we go. There's been a lot of news. In fact, my news shows, which I hope you've watched, usually contain about 9 news items, and I've had 18 news items come in during the last week. So I've got to do another show tomorrow to use up all this material. And of course, most of it is Israel-Palestine related and therefore of Islamic Judaism nature. Huh. Here's the first item. It's not happy, I'm afraid. It's about a 6-year-old boy who was stabbed to death over the weekend, and his final words were, "Mom, I'm fine." This happened in Plainfield, Illinois, US of A, and the mother was also stabbed. The boy was stabbed more than 2 dozen times. The mother had multiple serious injuries and more than a dozen wounds from a military-style knife. And the culprit was their landlord, a guy called Joseph Schuber, and he's now arrested, and he allegedly targeted his tenants because of their religion and the ongoing conflict between Hamas and Israel. That's the trouble with the global world. Some sort of incident happens somewhere, but then there's all the expats all over the place that get involved, get offended, get irate, and protest, or commit their own atrocities.
It's not an expat. He's an American. He's either an evangelical or a fundamentalist. And since the Muslims attacked Israel, he's got to defend Israel because the second coming doesn't happen if we don't have Israel. He's got to help Jesus. That's why this whole freaking thing happened. You know what I'm glad about? I'm glad about the fact that it's happening so rarely that this is the only one I've seen on the national news over here.
Yeah.
And the fact that I'm glad that it's only happening rarely is disgusting.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it isn't. I accept that it's rare in your part of the world because you are more distant.
I'm not defending us in any way. I'm just saying, it's
No. But I'm just glad that you're, really thousands of miles away. But unfortunately, in Western Europe, we have a lot more of this going on because the expats are here on both sides, So, for example, there's a British Jew in London who was chased and attacked by a pro-Palestinian mob shouting Allahu Akbar. And I don't know whether I can get up a video to show you this easily. It's not, I won't, because it's not very edifying seeing people run through the streets of London with all the background of the Portland stone buildings in the center of government where this was happening.
Well, you mentioned the last time I was on, I think, John, about you made an offhanded comment about needing a world government but not wanting to do away with localized governments, and that statement's kind of been rattling around in my head for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking, like, when we went from a city-state to a nation-state system worldwide, we didn't lose city governments. They just didn't.
Yeah.
The nation government just started doing the things the city governments weren't doing on a grander scale. Maybe what we need is a world government that only worries about human rights. Anything else you can take care of in your country. If it's human rights, that goes to the world government.
Well, I wish the United Nations would evolve into something like that. But at the moment, it's a bit of a paper tiger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tessia, you got anything to bring to this?
I have so much to bring that I'm afraid to begin because I might not end. I will just say that I fully agree with the idea of a world government that only looks at human rights, and then to decentralize as far as the local government is concerned. But I can't help but realize also that at the root of incidents like the one in Illinois and also the one in London is the fact that we just seem to find it so hard as a species to find the right balance between our individuality and our being part of a group or a tribe.
Yeah.
It just seems that we just can't find the right balance. And maybe that's something we should focus on educating people about, so that we are not completely isolated and we cannot function very well as isolated individuals, but our entire identity is never determined by the groups, and I say groups with reason, to which we belong. And we just need to work at getting that balance right. We need to work harder at getting that right.
Yeah.
Well,
somewhere between being a groupie and being an individual, there's a happy medium.
Well, and historically speaking, our tribes were largely geographic in nature until very recently, from a grand historic perspective. I mean, we'd be at 2 minutes to midnight when our communication got to the point where our tribes no longer had to be geographic in nature. And so we have this evolutionarily evolved mindset for tribes to be geographic in nature, and that leads to our tribal mentality being a bit xenophobic. And the problem is happening is today we live in a world where tribes aren't geographical in nature, they're ideological in nature. I join a tribe because I agree with the people in the tribe. And my next door neighbor might be in the tribe.
We are no longer restricted to where we originated from. And I blame the jumbo jet, which it made travel accessible by even not very rich people.
I just want to say that, Tom, what you just said about the tribal nature and the tribalism, if you want to call it that, has become so cross geographical borders. And regrettably, the most powerful ideological idea on which we base our tribal identity is religion. And what makes religion so particularly insidious is the fact that at least the three main Abrahamic religions claim to have this creature from up on high who gives me the right to say that I am right, because I'm and that makes religion particularly dangerous in terms of how religion is used to form people's identities. And religion is more important, I would dare say, in people who are very religious. In their minds, if they have to choose between being an American or being a Christian, if that were a choice, then they would choose being Christian above being American or South African. And that is what makes it so particularly dangerous.
So if only there was no God.
So, or if people realized that beliefs are personal, beliefs are not corporate. The problem happens when I start trying to convince people that my beliefs are right, instead of just having my beliefs and going on with life.
No, Tom, I don't want, this could be an entire discussion, but beliefs are not personal. They should be kept personal. Beliefs are extremely public because beliefs influence our actions. And we should keep our beliefs personal, but I don't think we can. And therefore, we should be very careful about what we believe, because our beliefs always become corporate to any limited or very expansive extent. I think that's part of the problem with beliefs, that beliefs never stay personal. True beliefs inform our actions, and that never stays in the personal realm.
Well, we could go down this road.
Yeah, I don't want to go down that road. I mean, ultimately, I agree with your points. I disagree with your logical leap at the end. I think we're talking across each other on semantics. I'm referring to beliefs as what I believe, my personal beliefs, and religion as in the corporatization of a belief system. And I'm saying the problem is that corporatization of a belief system. Now, if you don't believe that humans can hold personal beliefs and not try to corporatize them, I got a couple people to introduce you to, and one of them sitting right here. But
let's make a note of that, and we can have another discussion.
Yeah, I don't want to go down that road too far, but that's where I'm drawing the distinction.
Please make a note of that, because it's something I think needs to be unpacked somewhere in somebody's show.
Okay, right. So I'll make a note of that for you. Beliefs, personal or corporate. Okay. My personal view there is that a belief is merely a personal attitude towards a proposition.
Per definition, that's probably right, but it never stops there.
No, you're right. No.
And that's an interesting conversation to have, is are we capable of stopping it there?
Yeah.
We have it noted down. It will be discussed in due course.
Okay. So as an illustration of how these geographically nuclear events can spread out, in Brussels, 2 Swedish nationals were shot dead and a third person was injured. And the man claiming to be the attacker said in a video on social media that he had been inspired by the Islamic State group. He's an Arabic-speaking man who saying he carried out the attack in the name of God and that he killed 3 people. So it seems quite likely that it's a confession. But this happened in Brussels, which is nowhere near where the original dispute started up, and it caused the abandonment of the football match that was scheduled for that evening, and the King Baudouin Stadium, that's the place where the football match was going to happen. People were urged to go home and stay home until the threat has been eradicated. So it's overspill again.
Because it will.
Yeah. Moving on to Uganda, Eastern Africa, well, not coastal Eastern Africa, but inland Eastern Africa. There was what's been described as a cowardly terrorist attack of a couple on their honeymoon in the Queen Elizabeth National Park. They'd gone there to do some safari, camera and binocular enjoyment, and they were attacked, as was their guide, a Ugandan local, and their vehicle was burned. And the police are investigating this in Uganda, and they say that they suspect members of the Allied Democratic Forces rebel group, which is linked to IS. Now, apparently the ADF originates in Uganda, but it operates mainly in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo. These are abutting countries in the center of Africa. And the authorities have been intensifying operations targeting this group in recent months and claim to have prevented a plot that had been planned by ADF militants to bomb churches in the country's central Butambala district. So there you go. That's an African one for you, Tercia.
Yeah, Max, we do know that Islam is growing in Africa, and these things will happen more and more. And it's just same old, and I wish there was something one could do more than just talking about it. It really makes me despondent in so many ways, but yeah, how nice.
Yeah, indeed. Despair. So, Tom, here's one for you. This is about American Catholics who are calling for climate action because Pope Francis has just released his latest encyclical. I think it escaped. And he has blamed the United States as the world's biggest emitter of planet warming emissions. So on October the 4th, he issued this message, which called a Laudate Deum, or Praise God, and it asserts that emissions per person in the US are about 2 times greater than those of individuals living in China, and about 7 times greater than the average of the poorest countries. So he goes on to say, we can state that a broad change in the irresponsible lifestyle connected with the Western model would have a significant long-term impact. And he called for political decisions on climate change. Oh, there you go.
I just have to laugh about that, because the prime example of a very unsustainable lifestyle in terms of capitalism and luxury must be the Catholic Church. I just find that so ironic. Oh my goodness.
and celibacy, that's very unsustainable.
I'm not actually going to argue with him that we're the worst culprits in the world. I don't know. I don't know. I haven't looked into it. I mean, it's a worldwide problem, and we all need to do our part. So I'm more concerned with that aspect than are we the worst today. But I will say, when I was driving truck the first time I was out on the Great Plains, I was fairly convinced I was going to drive into a tornado, because up ahead of me, everything was black as far as the eye could see. On the Great Plains, if you haven't been on the Great Plains, you can literally see a horizon of dirt. And as far as I could see, everything was black. And as I drove deeper into this, the vegetation lost its color. Everything was covered in soot. I got to the very middle of it, and there was a power generation plant with a giant sign out front that informed me they were burning clean coal.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I will allow you. Trump was president at the time, on an unrelated note.
Yeah. Well,
I must say.
What amuses me is that the Pope seems to be deluded into thinking that he has some power. He thinks that his words, like a magic wand, could make it all better.
Yes, but if it's called what is it called?
encyclical.
Encyclical.
Yeah.
And what's the other Latin phrase?
Laudate Deum.
Oh, yes. If you call it a Laudate Deo, then it sounds like a magic spell, and surely that will make a difference.
That's actually him proclaiming that this document is to be read infallibly.
Yes, yes, that's right.
Laudate Deo.
He thinks he's God's representative on earth. I mean, how egocentric can you get? Huh. Anyway, staying with America, this has been bubbling on for years. Back in 2017, at a school board meeting, a mother called Nancy Gayer complained that her son wasn't allowed to share Jesus with his classmates during a school presentation, but the school district was being hypocritical because it was showing a cartoon video on Islam. Now, the background here is, this is in New Jersey, and they have a syllabus that requires children to be taught a course called World Cultures and Geography.
Mm-hmm.
So there are several units. There's a unit that deals with Western Europe. There's another one that deals with the Americas. And there's one that covers the Middle East and North Africa. And that section includes teaching the kids the basic beliefs of Islam. And that makes sense because in the Middle East and North Africa, Islam is a dominant religion. So it makes sense to make children aware of this. But there's two mothers, that particular one and her friend Libby Hilsenrath raised complaints, and they made false claims about what the school was doing. They said the video goes so far as even to make a statement, there is no God except Allah. And it states that Allah is the maker of everything, the one true God, and the main character in the cartoon video is looking for converts. Well, if you watch the video, I'm not going to play it now, but it is in the Global Atheist News Show. You'll see that the main character is not looking for converts. He's actually educating a cartoon friend of his who doesn't know anything about Islam. And they don't say that Allah is the one true God. They say that the people, that Muslims believe that Allah is the one true God. And what they're having difficulty with, these mothers, is coming to terms with the fact that their belief is a parallel, equally groundless belief, and they've got some idea that their belief is superior and true, and this subsidiary one shouldn't be allowed, when in fact they are both as much nonsense as each other. But you'll be pleased to hear that here we are now, 6 years later, this court case has been running on.
Mm-hmm.
The district judge, what was his name? No, I can't see his name just now. He has reaffirmed, this is one of the New Jersey district judges in his court. He has reaffirmed that teaching students about Islam in a public school does not amount to a violation of the Constitution.
That's a good thing. And as always, the proverbial devils are in the details, because let me quote Christians who often have, when I quote the Bible to them and say, oh, this is a very odd passage, then the word that's always thrown up in defense is, yes, but context, context. You have to read it in context. And it's just so amazing that this video was obviously quoted out of what we might refer to as context. So yeah,
Yes.
well, fantastic. I'm just grateful that, and just in South Africa, most Christians don't understand the difference between teaching religion and teaching about religion.
Yes.
So that's a common problem with all religions.
Yes. 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 Because
Especially
they think that.
Christianity, because one of the main tenets of Christianity is to make converts. I think Christianity is of all the three Abrahamic faiths, it's the one most focused on making, creating converts and converting people.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. They
It's,
because they are convinced that theirs is the only right one. They think nobody should be allowed to have any education about any of the others.
it's another attempt. They do it all the time in this country. They're weaponizing church and state again. The reason this is in the news now is because it just made it to the federal Supreme Court, which is where they all end up because they never give up. But here's how the game is played. Separation of church and state means that the federal government and the state governments cannot create any laws that favor one religion over another or demonize one religion over another or anything like that. It means that if we say that we're going to say a Christian prayer in school, we have to say prayers to all the faiths in school. But it is okay to do something like, we're just going to have a moment of silence every morning. You do whatever you want during that time, but everybody's going to be quiet and let you do it. That would be okay, because that doesn't support any religion. And it doesn't denounce any religion. Additionally, if there is a social need to teach our children about a given religion, the best place to institute that is in school. And if we do it in such a way that all we're doing is providing facts about the religion and not saying whether or not those things are correct, they're simply what the religion teaches. We can do that because then we're not favoring the religion, but we have to be very careful not to cross that line. So we would only do this if there's a large social need to. Like, I don't know, maybe the fact that some Muslim extremists flew planes into buildings on September 11th, 2001, which was immediately before we started teaching about Islam in our public schools. It took about 3 years. And the people that were spreading the hatred of all Muslims because of that are the reason that we had to do that. And I'm not going to accuse anybody of anything, but if the people complaining about the fact that we do it now aren't some of them that are the reason we had to, they know people who are.
Indeed.
I just want to defend the poor Christian mothers who felt that they had to make a law case over this, because if I can absolutely imagine being taught that other religions also have beliefs like that one of their main figures went to heaven on a horseback, basically ascended, and all sorts of other miracles. If I were taught that, if I was told when I was 11 that the Muslims believe that Muhammad went to heaven on a horse, on a winged horse, that would have set me thinking, okay, so what's so special about Jesus flying up via a cloud? And I get that Christians don't want that type of knowledge out there, because the normal 8, 9, 10-year-old, sort of when they hear those things, it doesn't take too much to put 2 and 2 together and get the answer of 0.
But instead of spending taxpayer money and everybody's time creating a federal case out of this, literally, I am not being hyperbolic. Okay, instead of creating a federal case out of this, how about you exercise the other rights we give you in this country, go to the school, get the curriculum, and tell them what parts you don't want your child to participate in, because legally you're allowed to do that. The Jehovah's Witnesses fixed that for you.
Yes, that's right. Yes. Well, the danger is that they might find out that all religions are being taught, and it's not specifically pushing Islam. Now, what I like about this is it's effectively two groups of people, the Red Riding Hoods and the Goldilockians, arguing over which myth is the best one.
The right one, not only the best one. We know which ones are the best.
Yeah, that's my point of view.
Marduk's is really interesting, actually. I mean, if we're just going to go from a literary standpoint with the best, I'm going with Marduk.
Finally, you'll be pleased to hear that a friend of mine on Twitter, X, Dr. Mark Darcy, has posted, I wonder what it would be like if nobody in the Middle East believed in God. And comments under his post went a bit further. They said, just imagine if nobody in the world believed in God. We might have fewer borders, less hate, less war, less homophobia, less misogyny, less racism. Isn't that a nice note to end on?
I disagree. They'd have a different reason for it, but we'd have just as much.
Oh, yeah. Now, I'm not saying there would be no disagreement.
I'm saying it wouldn't go down at all. The number of people that accept conspiracy theories has not increased. The percentage of people that accept conspiracy theories has not increased with our communication abilities, because the people that have a propensity to do that are the people that have a propensity to do that. The same is true of racism. The same is true of xenophobia. The same is true. They'll just find a different reason, man.
So that means we cannot just say we don't want any religion. We have to say, let's teach critical thinking. Let's teach media literacy.
Let's create a worldwide organization to impose human rights on people.
There you go.
Wrap it all the way back around.
Well, that gets to my theory, Tom. That gets to my theory that the best way of, and I was in trouble about this. Who's our friend from Ireland who gave me quite a hard time? But I still maintain, and Tom seems to agree with me, that we need a benign autocracy, a benign dictator. And the only trouble is, who's going to be that benign dictator? And I suggest it should be me.
On that note, say bye-bye.
It's been fun.
Was the Pope appealing for peace, or was he praying for peace?
And the same applies to the carry-on drag.
Yeah, that's a good question. So what do you have to say about that?